Thank you very much. As Master of Pembroke, I want to give a very, very warm welcome to all of you to this annual BT Lecture. Pembroke has a long association with British Telecom. We've had BT as one of our corporate partner companies for many years now. We deeply value the relationship that we have with BT, and I think they sort of value the relationship that we have with us as well. This evening's lecture is one in a series. We do this every year. Every year it is fascinating, it's wonderful, and it gets better and better. So no pressure at all, John, for your talk. John Beswick has been with BT for 17 years. He is the Chief Financial Officer for BT Technology. He's a board member for both the Mobile Broadband Network and for the Hertfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership. His talk tonight will be focusing on innovation and its role in business. And his talk is entitled From Purposeful Innovation to Delivering Commercial Advantage. John, welcome, and over to you.
I wanted to start by echoing how important the relationship between Cambridge and Pembroke and BT really is. I'm really delighted to be able to spend some time this evening with some thoughts. I thought long and hard about what I would cover this evening, and I decided I would take the role of provocateur. I wanted to think about and to engage in a conversation, some slightly different thoughts around what it means to think about innovation and commercial advantage. So I'm very much looking forward to spending the evening with you all, and I hope there will be lots of questions. I'll speak for around 40 minutes, and then I thought we could have a dialogue, any questions or perspectives, and I will do my very best to share on those. I hope that sounds okay. I should say actually, one of the things that when I was thinking about the title of this evening, I thought, I need somebody to hit the escape key. Carol, I might ask you to stay focused on that. I thought an alternative title could actually be The Magic of Purple. And you're probably thinking, what on earth is that about? I shall tell you as I go through. So, first of all, who am I? That's a much more relaxed photo up there, isn't it? When I'm working in technology these days at BT, the days of the suit are probably a little less common these days. I would describe myself as a hybrid. Let me tell you about why. So if I go right back to when I was in my teens, I had a love for technology all the way through my school years. It took me to Durham University, and I read engineering at University College in Durham. And when I went into my 20s, I went straight into an engineering career. I worked for a company that probably doesn't, some of you will know the name of. The younger folks in the room may never have heard of it, GEC. I worked for a company called GEC Plessey Semiconductors as an engineer, a semiconductor engineer making application-specific integrated chips, ASICs, as we used to talk about them. I then went to a company called Siemens Microelectronics, now known as Infineon, and I was one of the folks in the background here. You can see a wafer. That's a silicon wafer, and it contains a chip full of 64 meg DRAMs, dynamic random access memory. I was capacitor guy at Siemens. So, in each one of these DRAM cells, of course, you have a transistor and a capacitor. It's very important to get the amount of silicon nitride into the capacitor, get it just the right thickness, or your capacitance goes all over the show. And I learned lots and lots and lots about making microchips. Loved my role at Siemens. When I got to the end of my 20s, though, I remember thinking that semiconductor manufacturing was moving out to Asia. Why was that happening? What are the economics of engineering? What is it that was happening that chose for all of the capacity that existed in the engineering space was moving out of the UK. Companies like National Semiconductor, people like GEC, people like Fujitsu, people like Siemens, or Infineon as they are now, and it was all moving out. And I remember thinking long and hard about what to do as I went into my 30s. That took me somewhere different. It took me to Deloitte. But as I passed through all of that, I did become a chartered engineer with the IET. And I loved engineering. But then it took me on to a new chapter. This is the hybrid part of me coming out. I headed off to Deloitte, no longer called, Deloitte now, Deloitte & Touche when I was there. And I trained to be a chartered accountant. I did something called the ACA, it's the Institute of Chartered Accountants, England and Wales studies, and I worked in the TMT sector, telecoms, media and technology. And I had a fabulous time there, learning all about commerce, learning about what does it take to drive and build enterprise value. And then having done that, I came to BT in 2002, as the Master mentioned a moment ago. And I've loved my career at BT, and through those 17 years, good evening Lisa, the thing I've loved about BT is this opportunity to bring together technology, commercial matters, and to think about how that can be used in an enterprise organisation to drive value. So that was my 30s, being an accountant. What about my 40s? What have I done in my 40s? I've been an executive in a number of our businesses in BT. I was lucky enough to be the finance lead where BT acquired EE, a £12.5 billion organisation, and it was a fabulous opportunity to work on that programme. I'm the guy who was thinking about where does BT invest its money in. We spend more than £3 billion each year building out our networks for the purpose of customers. I do that thinking around these commercial thoughts and these technology thoughts. Spent a long time on that. And the Master also mentioned, I have a number of roles where I'm trying to develop myself again, think about how I operate more generally. So I am on the board at MBNL. That's the share that BT and Three have sharing their mobile network. O2 and Vodafone share all of their radio infrastructure in a company called CTIL, Cornerstone. I sit on the board at MBNL. I'm also on the board at Bournemouth University. So quite an interesting and hybrid basis. So why do I mention this? Well, I was thinking what to discuss in tonight's lecture. And when I was thinking about that, I went first of all to our shared purpose. On the left for Pembroke, this notion around leading rolling commitment to the university, the UK and the world. And I felt that really resonated with BT's purpose. We think about ourselves, BT, ever more as a national champion. We think about the role that BT can play in an economy which has a digital foundation, if you like. And I thought it would be really interesting to think about areas where we have a common purpose between Pembroke and BT. So at the title, I talked about this idea of purposeful innovation. Now, I wasn't here last year. Tim, I think, talked about this notion of purposeful innovation. So what is that all about? Let me try and bring this to life. This is something that I think has been at the heart of BT or our predecessor organisations since 1837. And it brings together a number of ideas. It brings together the idea that there's a scientific breakthrough. There's an engineering application for that. But we need to look at both of these ideas together and use it to deliver a purposeful outcome. And I'll talk about this a number of times as I go through this evening. So this is the triangle that we talk about for purposeful innovation. All of Tim's teams are all looking up at this. This is something that Tim will speak about all of the time. But this notion around a scientific truth, how can we apply that very practically, and then how can we use that to deliver value in our organisations? As I mentioned, we can trace this right back to 1837. William Fothergill Cook and Sir Professor Charles Wheatstone filed a patent. And that patent was the underpinning of what would become the Electric Telegraph Company. And one of the thoughts I wanted to think about was this hybrid nature. It wasn't just thoughts around science. It wasn't just the idea that there could be an application, if you like. It was about the brilliance of bringing together both of those thoughts, both of those capabilities to deliver something very, very special. We were super proud, and we went to look at the BT archives a number of months ago now, I guess, isn't it? And we saw that original patent, I think, Tim. So purposeful innovation, the fusing and bringing together of these scientific and engineering practicality. Does that make sense as this idea? And I was taken with this idea, but I wanted to take it a little bit further. So I want to introduce you. You'll notice my tie. You'll notice the colour of my front slide. Purple is the idea that I want to share with you. And I really think this is a pivot. So all of the folks who are undergrads or starting out their career, I think there's an idea here that I really wanted to play. So many people in BT, or so many people in engineering firms, inhabit this space. The engineers, the scientists, the technologists. Tim suggested to me that a better title for today's lecture could be Why I Decided to Quadruple the Research Budget. And I thought, I'm not sure about that, Mr. Whittle. But the reason why he was jesting was because Tim is what I'm going to describe as a purple person. It's not just the idea of wanting to develop science or technology or engineering for their own sake. So, community number one, the red. It's a bit. I come from Manchester, and we have a similar red and blue divide. This is a different one. The second area is business people, the accountants, the lawyers, the people who are running a business. And I think back to 1845 or 1837 when we brought together these two ideas. We had people thinking around commerce and technology, engineering and its application in the enterprise. How do we work together? I would suggest that we need to think about the purple people. People like Tim. People, hopefully, like myself. When I start to think about what allows me to be the CFO in BT, thinking about £3.5 billion every year where we're investing and thinking about our organisation to build a digital Britain. It's this idea around purpleness. Does that make sense? It's the bringing together of the two areas that I wanted to talk about today. So some people who you may have heard of. The idea of a purple person isn't, this example about, a mashing together that doesn't make sense. So if we think about the Medusa, the lady out in the caves with her sisters, with snakes for her hair. It's not the idea of a half-human, half-lion sphinx type character. This is not what we're thinking about. Who are we thinking about? We're thinking about people who have links to very much our college here. We were thinking around Sir George Stokes, a physicist who was also always, I think you celebrated Stokes and his life just a few months ago. Carol was telling me about this. And I'll check my notes. I was reading a lot about his work in fluids and so many things that he delivered. And I was taken with some of the work he did with the Royal Commission when he was looking at the use of iron in railway structures after what was, I think it was called the Dee Bridge disaster, and really thinking around how you can apply notions like fluids or physics and science into a very real-world environment. There's a purpleness coming out in this. It's the application of a scientific thought, a consideration that might come from one of my red people, but you're being applied in a different space. Stokes was one of the first people I thought about when I was preparing for this evening. I'd like to introduce somebody else, Tommy Flowers. Tommy Flowers is somebody who, in BT, we think about so fondly. And actually, in some of our relationships with the IET, we think about and celebrate Flowers all of the time. a post office research engineer, and he was somebody who recognised a very real requirement for us to. He built a computer, but why did he build this computer? Why did he build it? It was to help in Bletchley Park, and it was about saying, we've got all these calculations that we can perform. We need to be able to break the Lorentz code. And it was really about the need that, it was the scientific possibility applied to a real business need. That's where I think Flowers was operating on this purple basis. The magic comes together when you see these two. This is the notion of magic of purple that I was thinking about as my second idea. Now, one of my favourite bands when I was a kid were the Monkees. People may have heard of the Monkees. People know this guy. Well, one of the Monkees, Michael Nesmith, his mother was very purple. You're probably thinking, what on earth was special about her? Bette Nesmith Graham. She was a secretary in a Texas bank, and in her spare time, she would be an artist. She loved art, and when she was painting, the idea that if there was an error that had to be corrected in painting, one can just apply, more colour, more flow, a white background. But actually, as a typist working in her organisation, one couldn't do that. She was the inventor of liquid paper. The idea that says the application of an idea that came from her true purpleness, that was the idea, I think, that made a big difference. So I would offer in the past that there are a number of examples where people have been beautifully purple and they've been bringing together these ideas, and it's bang on, I think, in line with our idea about purposeful innovation. I hope I have the idea with you all. If I bring it a little closer to home, I'm obviously my day job is I'm a CFO. I'm a CFO and I have a number of things that I'm accountable for within BT. I'm delighted to be the CFO of one of our divisions. I sit on the executive of that board with Tim. And one of the things that has happened in my time as an accountant is that the role of a CFO has completely changed. I remember going back to when I was studying accountancy not too long ago, in my 30s. And we used to, all of my audit files used to be handwritten. All of my files I would be looking at, I'd have such a thing as 13-column trial balance paper. For any of you who are interested in accountancy, you'll know what such a thing is. But this is something that Deloitte have published, and it talks about this changing role of a CFO. And let me introduce it to you. It talks about 4 faces. Who might the faces of this CFO be in a new world? And we would break it up into an area here. I'm going to call that the shield of an organisation, the thing that allows you to defend an organisation, and the sword. Actually, it was the Japanese practice in Deloitte who actually introduced this sword and the shield idea. But let me tell you about these 4 different roles for a CFO in modern practice, and I think this purpleness starts to come out in here. So, of course, a finance person is definitely going to be the bookkeeper, the person who can prepare and the person who can give a set of accounts to colleagues, to stakeholders to say this is how an organisation is getting on. They keep score. You can see that in the steward part. That is definitely a core accountability in our business. A second piece, an operator. So many organisations, we will talk about business services organisations that sit in a corporation, and there's a whole drive around automation, how one can improve your accounts payable process. Companies rise and fall based on the cash flows that they can manage, and actually making sure that you can operate that, very important in any organisation, the operator role. But actually, where are organisations valuing a contribution for a finance professional these days? We see it at a different place. We see it at the top. We see it in this catalyst, and we see it in a strategist role. Most of my time, when I'm spending time at BT, I'm thinking about how does BT build a fibre nation? I'm thinking about how we can create the oxygen in our cash flows, in our profits that we're making to invest behind infrastructure. How do we launch 5G and from an economic perspective, how are we going to deliver for customers and then the economic returns that we expect? The finance role has changed. We're having to apply different types of capability. We're operating as either strategist or a catalyst for change is the other idea. How do we optimise and think through the right portfolio of how we deliver? So, if this is the idea, I remember going back to my engineering thoughts. It is a long time ago when I studied engineering in 1991, and I thought about these Boolean operators, the AND operator and the OR operator. I think when I was coming through the door into college this evening, it reminded me of when I started at Durham University. And the questions were, what are you studying? How did you decide what to study here? How did you decide to do maths, or engineering, or physics? And I think there's a new need. Remember the purpleness that we had for all of those characters? I think the new opportunity and imperative for organisations is to be applying the AND clause. How do we think differently about the skills that we need for tomorrow, and a different type of career where people, we can celebrate the fact that people have a multidisciplinary, multi-insight into how they operate. I would offer that we need Boolean and careers instead of this Boolean or career. Which one are we looking at? Carol and I had some fun when we were thinking about today. This is my favourite title of a slide on this basis. 50 Shades of Purple. So I haven't seen this film, but apparently there is such a film. And yeah, it's this idea, really, that I'm not suggesting that, the combination of accountant and engineer is the only shade of purple that I would be thinking about. It's not the only shade that I would be offering as the right approach. But what I am saying is that we need to encourage so many people to move past the idea of being a physicist or just an engineer or just a business analyst or an anthropologist. I'm suggesting that there is a need for us to have these Boolean and careers. And I'm going to give you some examples, I hope, where I think we're applying this in BT today. So the first of these was anthropology and computer science. We are hiring anthropologists into our IT teams. Modern practices in IT development talk about human-centered design. We think a lot. I talked about one of the roles in finance is running the operations like accounts payable, accounts receivable. This is teams working with technology, and how do you drive best adoption of a technology into a workplace, into a team? The IT teams that work within our division, Tim and I, the division that we run together, we are hiring people with multi-skill. Technology is a core capability, but we need to have different insights that allow us to produce technology that matters, technology is used, and technology that drives a business advantage. Otherwise, it's like giving an iPod to my grandmother and expecting that she knows what to do with this technology. She doesn't know how to use that iPod because it hasn't got the grip, if you like, to be used by her. So there's an example of a skill that we're looking at, a Boolean and career that I would offer to be of interest. Psychologists and data scientists, we have a massive security practice at BT. We're really proud of the role that we take working with so many organisations, thinking about the response to cyber threats each day. But the techniques that are being used by people with the wrong intent to try and extort or to take capability off our customers, they're using capabilities which prey on the psychology of mind and how people can really be coerced into sharing pieces. In our security practice, in our cyber practice, we are actively hiring people with, of course, a technology capability, but also with deep insight into psychology and how we can use that to protect our customers. I think this Boolean and is going to become ever more important as we move forward. So if that's the idea, I thought I would take us into some real examples. How does that sound? So example number one, G.Fast. G.Fast is, I'm glad Trevor is here. Any of the technical questions that we get later on, Trevor Linney will be taking later on. But I will tell you why this is important to me, as the guy who wants to understand economics and commercial within BT. So in 2014, speeds of up to 1 gigabit per second were demonstrated using GFAST. It does this by 6 times more spectrum than previous technologies and some advanced signal processing. This is a scientific breakthrough. Delighted with that. Not enough from this triangle that I'm talking around purposeful innovation. Let me introduce you to our network in the UK. I'm sure people will have seen this before. I will just take you through it from the right-hand side. 29 million premises where our customers are enjoying broadband services. Moving on to the side, a distribution point, normally a telegraph pole. If you're visualising a house of a loved one, for any of you, you can just imagine that house and then there'll be a copper wire that swings to the top of a telegraph pole. We might call that a distribution point. 4.7 million distribution points. Those distribution points take you to a green cabinet. You will probably see these, on the corners of high streets up and down the land, often with some graffiti on them or an advert for a local concert, something like that. But this is a green cabinet, very important to us, 90,000 cabinets. And they all backhaul then connectivity to our telephone exchanges, 5,500 telephone exchanges. So what's the insight? What's the engineering imperative within this? I'll show it to you. It's this little graph just in the middle. This shows you the distribution in the UK. This is a UK answer, very important to us. Different topology of the UK compared to the Americas, or different to what might be happening in Korea with different ways of living. But in the UK, the distance from a premise to that green cabinet is 35 metres. That is the magic number. That is the magic number for our economic case. Because what we realise is when we're thinking about rolling out fibre broadband to our customers, we're thinking about the economics of it. Just think through the economics of trying to power electricity to the top of all of those 4.7 million distribution points. Think about the issues from a health and safety perspective. Think about the complexity there. We took that engineering thought, the scientific breakthrough, and we started to say, what would it take us to get to the magic 350 metres? So how did we do that? This is the journey that we took through that area. So we go back to the Shannon-Hartley theorem, and we look at the capacity, we look at the bandwidth that we need, we look at the signal-to-noise ratio, and we understand what's the engineering possibility, what's the scientific position that we can get to. And then we go and do some work in the lab. This is literally Trevor's lab. We can see this if people go and study the frames and the equipment that we have up in Trevor's lab in Dashwood Park. I'm working with organisations like the University of Cambridge, University of Southampton. One of the things we started to do is we said, we think there's an opportunity to get speeds at 350 metres based on the insight from the Hartley-Shannon physics position. And then we said, what does it take to influence the standards? How do we then go and work with engineering standard setting bodies, with the people who manufacture this core, the engineering providers, people like Nokia? And how do we set that capability into our forward product set? And then convince our business. We ran actual pilots in Newcastle, Gosforth outside of Newcastle, and in Huntington. And what did we find? We found that actually we could avoid making massive investments in the UK by full fibre deployment, and we managed to meet our customers' requirement for bandwidth using this amazing technology. So I would offer that this is the purposeful innovation thought together. It's the idea of the scientific breakthrough, the engineering thought, but critically, this purple mind in the middle. What's the sweet spot for our business case? What is the thing that we need to do to meet our customers' needs? A lovely example, I think, of the work that Trevor Linney and some of the team have done in partnership with organisations like the University of Cambridge. My next example isn't cosmology. I promise you I am not going to try and talk about cosmology, but Saturn is a second insight that I would like to give to you all, to give an insight in how this purpleness can come about in the work that we do in BT. Visual analytics for security. So this matters to me because it matters to our customers. Each of us will be thinking at a personal level about how we protect our data, the information about ourselves, our loved ones, our corporations. And today, the rise of the hacker or the rise of the cyber threat that an organisation can have is something that is a subject for academic insight. It's a thought for us all as individuals. And it's not just a hobby in a bedroom when somebody is thinking about how can they get access to information. This can be nation states seeking to get information from corporations, banks, operators of critical national infrastructure. It's a really material issue for all organisations and all corporations, I believe. More connectivity, more vulnerability. We've done some work at BT and we've been thinking what's going to happen in 10 years, and we know that when we think about application cases for 5G in the future, 5G will be a capability that connects devices and machines in higher numbers than it connects customers and their operations. In an ever more interconnected world, a world about IoT, we will see that the capability to bring together communities and clusters of technology is going to be absolutely pivotal to us. And look at the risks. A Raspberry Pi device was used to steal data from NASA. They found in the NASA, I forget which, the Jet Propulsion Lab over at NASA, somebody had installed a data grooming device that was taking hardware data from the centre of that critical operation. So how do you look for this? How do you find these threats? Now actually as a board member, as somebody who thinks around technology all the time, one of the top level board matters that exists in most corporations up and down the land is the response to this cyber threat. And then the question, a little like insurance, how much do you invest to be able to mitigate this risk? How much insurance do I need for a particular matter? Super hard question. One of the things that's happening in this more purple agenda these days for people like myself, I run the security insight practice for technology because it's a key business role now. So with that thought in mind, how do you find this needle in a needle stack? Well, we know that algorithms can help find for us threat issues as they exist. What they can't do though is replace the brilliance of the human mind. So we have this idea now that we're deploying tools like Saturn, which bring together the very human capability of pattern recognition, of insight, the identification of visual insight with cyber tracking techniques. And what you can see examples of in Saturn is a capability that we sell to our biggest corporate customers. You can see that you can start to aggregate and see areas of threat. And again, this was a capability that came out of our research teams. It was the idea that understood that you can track and monitor a network, be it a network like our own across 180 countries, or a bank or any organisation. But it's that thought about the purple thought about how can you introduce the human brain to be at its best in pattern recognition to look quickly for issues that we're seeing. And let's have a look what happens. We're now putting these very capabilities into the hands of our data scientists. This is our Security Cyber Operations Centre. I believe this is the one that's down in Sevenoaks. Probably shouldn't say where it was, but we have these main centres. And what we're doing is we're able to find these jeopardies and these attacks in seconds rather than hours that a computer would just be doing through trawl, based on this combination of strength of the computers and the insights that we can get. We showed Philip Hammond, when he was Secretary of State for Defence, this capability, and he talked about the unique nature of our offering and how you can bring together the best. And that was done through BT, again delivered out of our research capability here at BT and over at Industrial Park. So I hope that was a second example of purpleness that will be of interest. So I guess in closing, the thought that I really wanted to share with everybody was that this idea about purpleness is something that we've seen in the past. I gave you examples where people have had that capability and that insight in the past. I gave you examples about purple today, but I've put back up again now the purpose statements for Pembroke and BT. And this is where I wanted to start to get other people's views and perspectives, because I'm not sure that we are doing a sufficient level of intervention to really think about the future. And let me give you some stats that I really was thinking about as we look at this. The half-life for skills as we move forward, I think a recent study again by Deloitte talked about the half-life of skills is 5 years. Back to my 13-column trial balance paper and the fact that nobody does anything like that. The skills and capability that people are learning today, 5 years, half-life of those skills. We have to be evergreen in our learning environment and asking each one of us to say what's our role to deliver a new set of capabilities. Still, I think, when we, within BT, we look at people who are coming into our organisation at every level, we tend to think about what is the background of an individual, an engineer, an accountant, a mathematician. This year, we looked really hard at the people who were joining BT at an undergraduate level, and we've actually taken away the STEM requirement now. We really, really, really do value people with insight, curiosity, a perspective to say we want to understand something more than just the base, the base profession that they'll be looking to deliver. We're interested in people with a number of capabilities and really wanting to apply those into an area where they think they can deliver value. Are we doing enough on these Boolean and careers would be my question to us all. One of the things that I'm really proud of in BT is that just last month we talked about interventions that BT is going to put in place for school kids, for families, for people who struggle with technology. We're going to be thinking about 10 million people and how we can go out and give them the technology skills that they need for a modern life. It still feels that we're playing catch-up, so we will do all of those things. Lisa does such a lot of work from Industrial Park thinking about how we can push that agenda forward. I'm not sure that it is sufficient. So I would love to get people's thoughts on this idea, and I think my closing provocation would be, what can each of you do? What is our role individually to actually drive this purpleness, to encourage people to think around something that isn't a Boolean or career, but a Boolean and career? I'd love to open for some questions. I think we're just about on time as well. So I would love to open this up. I don't know if we have a mic if people want to ask questions or to offer perspective. Do we have any thoughts from the room, please?
So it's a question, maybe more a comment than a question. No argument with your ambition and career. I think there is always a danger that people try to cram that into a 4-year course or a 3-year course or something. Yeah. Whereas this sort of paradigm you gave of your own career, where you actually spread this out over decades time and do things properly one at a time, is a sound way to go. But of course, it's expensive in terms of resources, people, and so on.
I purposely talked about these decades, my teens, my 20s as an engineer, my 30s as an accountant. Maybe the piece that I left out was passion. Now, I could be an accountant anywhere. I could do this. Technically I'm capable of doing it, but it's not where my passion is. And maybe one of the ands, I think it's always been for me about this commercial thought deployed in technology, a technology firm. So the reason I mention this is I think we have to follow curiosity, and you're right. The idea that there is a course that shows a set pattern for how to achieve a particular thing, I'm not sure that's the right idea. And this idea of following a passion, thinking about a broader set of capabilities, I'm convinced that technology is going to underpin every career as we move forward, and following that curiosity for the future, that would be the idea. And I agree with you, it's not something that we could package. I'm sure there's a course out there somewhere that does engineering and accountancy for future CFOs, but I probably wouldn't recommend anybody to go and do it. Thank you. Any other, please?
Can I just follow up on that question? So you've had a long career with BT and presumably had opportunities
No.
So this need to really enhance your skills on a perhaps 5-yearly basis. How do individuals go about doing that, and what responsibility do employers have to support that when people are perhaps only working for a company for 3 years?
Yeah. It is very unusual. I agree with you too. I came into BT as a finance manager. That would be like a newly qualified accountant, albeit I was a bit older than some of the others, and built this career. Been very lucky to do that. I think it's a two-way deal. Is the thing I would say about this. I do think there is something around the individual seizing and owning their career. I believe that it's the reason I read about the 4 faces of the CFO. What is a modern CFO to be? When I hire people to come into my accounting team, I'm hiring people who understand coding capability like R. I'm understanding how you can apply learning algorithms to understand how to optimize my finance processes. There's definitely something about an individual surveying what is happening, being aware of that and driving their career to understand it. So I think that's number one. I think from a BT perspective, the thing I would say as a corporation and an employer is that we need to make sure that we're thinking about every type of talent and making sure we're catering to it. So when I think about Barefoot, which is one of our programs where we think about technology skills, it's right in the primary school. I hope you've all seen the BT advert that's on, that's out there at the minute, where you see that young lady thinking about the tale of two cities and saying, best of times, worst of times. We need to engage at that level. We need to be engaging. I sponsor BT's Finance Apprentice program. We need to bring people in who are transitioning, out of their late teens. We need to be engaging at university level. We need to be thinking about people at undergrad, at postgraduate, and I think it's just about being on it. So the individual needs to own the agenda, I would say, and then I think corporations need to have a range of ways to be able to attract that best talent, and then to be ready to say, we will invest in you. The competitive advantage, I think, comes from the war for that best talent, because people are going to have choices about where they want to go, and we want to make sure at BT that we've got the best of the talent that's out there, because our customers will. The easiest business case to write is the business case for talent, because they just make magic happen, that purple magic happen, I would offer. So that would be my view. Does that resonate with your experience?
Yes, I suppose so.
You sound hesitant though. There's a big but.
Yeah, I suppose my experience of working for very big organisations that have the resources to invest in their people is absolutely that. Smaller organisations aren't necessarily in that position and
Yes.
don't necessarily have that much forethought, but less people are working for huge organisations.
Yeah. I think the notion of curiosity can apply to every individual and every corporation, every business done, no matter how big. And I think that is the magic. That's the magic of Purple for me. Curiosity, and what's the art of the possible, I would say. Please, we have a question on the back row. Or an observation.
Sorry?
Or an observation, whichever one you would like.
My question's in 2 parts. You kind of touched on my first question right at the end of your talk. It actually has been shown that young people about the age of 8 years old make a judgment on themselves and what career they're going to have. Maybe not career specifically, but there's
you're right.
a sort of sense of, I'm not a scientist, that's not for me. So my question first of all is, you're talking about investing in the next generation. I wonder how much BT does investing in younger people, or by young people I'm talking about, primary schools and getting them out early. And the second part of the question, the same theme about, the whole point of that is to attract lots of different types of people, not just your typical ones that usually get, funneled that way. So the second part of the question is, what does BT do in terms of its research and development department in expanding its network and talking to other companies? Is it part of a framework? Does it actually mix with other countries, other people, other technologies to increase its innovation?
Fabulous thought. So, and I'll say a few words on that, and then I may invite Lisa and Tim to say a few words on this. So the first piece around, I have a daughter who's 13, and she has made some in and out choices already, and I've no idea how this happened. Maybe it's an over-enthusiastic father. She will say, I love a particular subject, and she'll say, this particular subject is not for me. And I think that's such a shame, because the application of this or idea at such an early age, before the curiosity into what is this endeavour, what is this topic, what is this thought. So one of the things that we definitely do in BT, I talked about this barefoot computing piece. Technology can be something which can polarise. You know, if there was a general view, we might say it's a more boyish pursuit, you know, STEM, more masculine idea. I don't know why that is the case. I guess it's a historical view. We believe that computing technology capability is for everybody. It will underpin what every child will need to be able to do in their future. And we run a program called Barefoot, which starts at that early age and teaches everything from Arduino boards to Raspberry Pi capabilities, computational thought. How can you really inspire somebody and give them a different idea about what this technology could be, reframe it, as opposed to my pals like it. So I think that will be number one, and in a moment I might ask Lisa to speak to this point. The second thing I would say is about how does BT operate in an ecosystem. We were just up at, we have a big campus out near Ipswich. We call it Adastral Park. We're renaming it though Innovation Martlesham. We've used the name Innovation Martlesham to describe what we do. We have tens and more than 100 companies that come together to really think about the application of technology in multidisciplinary teams to come together and to just interact. I mean, BT is a proud company since 1845, I think 1837. I apologise, the history needs to be one of my more purple attributes. The idea that we bring together ecosystems and partners together to be able to learn and develop is something that we believe in our core, and that's why we run Innovation Martlesham, to let people come together on these campuses and iterate together. That's why we also do all the work with Cambridge, actually, because we need this coming together and thoughts, different perspectives to allow us to get this competitive view. Lisa or Tim, would you like to add anything?
I'll mention the ecosystem.
Yes. So your point is very well made, and it's something that we really recognise. We are, if we wait until children are sort of choosing their GCSEs, we've kind of lost the fight almost. So obviously I'm coming at this from the perspective of we want to inspire the next generation of technologists. So the work that we do to kind of inspire our next generation of technologists to choose STEM and to stick with STEM starts right at the base level, as John was saying, at kind of year 2 is sort of where we start, because we recognise that we want to inspire them as the arms of what technology can be. And John mentioned some of the barefoot programs and the computational thinking, but what we're trying to do is also give them that sense of what the variety of technology career can actually be, and really open their eyes from a really early age as to, actually it can be something in an operations centre, it can be, something around research, it can be hands-on, it can be out on the road fixing, some of the green cabinets that John alluded to, and everything in between. So the work that we do is to try and open children's eyes as to the art of the possible, but also give them some of the skills in terms of how they can apply that in technology and their environment. And we're also evolving thinking from a STEM thinking to a STEAM thinking, which kind of reflects the practicalness of John's presentation, which is we are trying to encourage that kind of arts flavour into kind of that STEM scenario. So that actually what we're trying to encourage children to acknowledge is that it can be a very rounded environment. Technology career can be a kind of a very rounded environment. So we start right at the young age, because we want, by the time they're choosing their GCSEs, that they've had that exposure and they can work out for themselves how they want to apply that and what they identify strongly with in terms of what infuses them.
Fabulous. Tim, innovation?
So you're absolutely right. I mean, innovation happens everywhere. So Adastral Park, which is our innovation HQ, there's about 1,000 non-BT people. Those are the 130 other businesses there. But of course, we're also, we do work with universities. This one, we actually, I have to admit, we do work with other universities as well. Obviously, it's not as good, was high quality. But we do work with about 40 other universities around the world, and we have labs around the world. So we've got presence in Chihuahua, in Abu Dhabi, in Boston, in Bangalore. So there's a sort of a whole framework of interaction with other innovators around the world. And of course, and John did touch on this, the whole global communications is by definition a collaborative affair. Whether that's collaborating with an ecosystem of suppliers to create the stuff that we then need to create services that we will then provide, or whether it's collaborating with people who may ultimately become our competitors, but to create the technology that works. You know, it'd be really annoying, wouldn't it, if, I mean, obviously you're all on the EE network, or BT Mobile, clearly in this room, but I believe there are some people who do get services from people like Vodafone or O2. And it would be really annoying if your phone wouldn't work across networks. So international standards is the way in which we get all this stuff to work. That's a hugely pre-competitive, collaborative process. So there's a massive network which we can delve into of supply chain, cooperators, collaborators, to create the technology that ultimately is becoming the very underpinning of our modern digital world. And we're at the heart of it. And as, I mean, John used the phrase national champion. You know, we are the UK national champion in terms of creating those international standards, driving those international standards, and essentially trying to create the technology that suits the sort of country that we all live in, as opposed to the demography that we all live in, and the way we choose to structure our society. That's something that we do in a pre-competitive phase as part of that big global conversation. So it's fascinating stuff. And any of you young people who are looking for careers in BT, I would say, come and think about working for us, because, and I mean, to pick up on Rachel's point, and John's amply demonstrated it, I think, BT is a company that will invest in you and will allow you to have a vast range of careers. You know, I joined at 16 with some O-levels. I have more qualifications than that now, but we can talk about that later. In all seriousness, it's an amazing business, and I think the other thing I would say, Rachel, is I think we need a few more businesses like BT in the UK who actually do provide that ability for you to pursue whatever particular career you are interested in and pursue your passion. And I think that's for me, that's something about UK competitiveness. And I think we need a few more businesses that are committed to apprenticeship schemes, postdoc, graduate training, things like that. So if you're interested in coming to work for a company that does do all that, talk to me or John afterwards.
Talent is always the easiest business case. Please.
Hi, I'm Pradeep from Judge Business School. So my question is around innovation and your purple color thinking. You kind of spoke about that in reference to your research lab, where you're bringing in hundreds of companies, as you said, to create innovation. And your colleague, mentioned about many labs around the world to go around and interact with innovators. So that's all good. But in Cambridge, one of the things I think we are proud of is the innovation. And that innovation happens in the university itself, but also growing in entrepreneurship. And people coming out with new ideas and trying to implement that through many startups. So I was quite interested in terms of understanding your approach, in terms of reaching out to innovation ecosystems. That's not necessarily where you are based. How do you interact and bring that innovation in?
Fabulous. So, one of the things that we are really proud of is the number of inventions that does come out of BT each year. We are the biggest filer in the UK of inventions. I think when we look at the number of inventions and patents filed last year, really proud of that. But all of the ideas and all of the capability don't just come from that in-house capability. I do believe passionately that we need an internal capability that can be deeply scientific, deep engineers, a deep capability at the heart of our organisation. Right back to that, the idea of my triangle at the beginning. The idea about the G.Fast standard didn't come from within BT. But it was that the application of that idea, that invention, that's where the magic happens. And therefore, I think the relationship that BT has with Cambridge, we have the same thing when we look at our partner organisations. We partner with thousands and thousands of engineers through organisations like Tech Mahindra, TCS, Infosys, Accenture, Bain, McKinsey, all of them. And one of the things that we're looking for, actually the arbiter for us, is about customers and customer need. So our model that we're thinking about is customer success. What are the emerging best practices that are needed? We can survey and look across the horizon to see what's happening out there in the world. We will pinch that with pride. We will take the best ideas and we will apply them within BT, but we will do it in an economically, a technically, a mature and disciplined way to apply these capabilities into our business. So I do see it as a model in BT where we definitely need a heartland of capability internally. We need to partner with the best. BT will, as a great example, Apple will launch a 5G capable phone next year. I am determined that we're going to have the best network that will be able to launch with Apple devices on that network. We will work really hard, and we have been working with that organisation to partner to bring the best to our customers. So we're not exclusive. We would work with anybody where we can deliver a customer need, and I think the role of collaboration is going to be at the heart of this. So whenever there's, back to that talent point, if there's talent and capability, we will be working with it. Not necessarily with a quadruple budget for the research team, but at least a healthy investment that puts us the biggest investor in R&D in our space in the UK. So we continue to develop and research together. I think it's a pivotal point. I think we have a couple more, and then please.
I was interested, you were arguing questionably for breadth of capability in individuals, but so I spent the last 20 years or so working in government, where I think the risk is sometimes that people have too great a breadth and not enough depth in particular areas. There's a tendency to value generalists who tend to move from one role to another every 2 or 3 years. And the result is if you're trying to develop policy and government on something complex like cybersecurity or 5G, it's not always the case that people are doing that have great experience. So I guess the practical question is how to get that balance right between absolutely the value of being able to make connections across different disciplines. There are some things that you do need to understand in detail.
Completely. I mean, here to that. I think that's completely right. So if I think about BT and our organisation, of course we have our regulatory experts. Catherine, who runs our regulatory team, a deep subject matter expert. But I believe the notion of the scrum is probably where I'll be thinking about this in an agile environment where we deliver. We think about bringing the best, a team of people, typically 8 to 10 people, to develop a business idea. And it's about getting the right skills within that mix. I think I talk about purpleness to offer the idea. A regulatory team that only works in isolation, working on a matter of policy, I believe wouldn't get to the right answer. A team of engineers working on their own on a particular answer wouldn't get to the right answer when we think about fibre economics in the UK. It's the idea about a diverse team, a purplish team, applying deep subject matter, insight and capability, or in a multifunctional team for the success of customers would be the thing that I put at the fore. But as a qualified chartered accountant, I think I need to know what I'm up to and doing, and that does sit back on a professional accreditation and standard. Throughout all of this, I'm not offering a jack of all trades, master of one idea. I'm offering an idea where people think more broadly, but you need a license to operate in certain capabilities. I need to be a chartered accountant. To work in Professor Tim Whitley's team, you need a guaranteed and a licensed approach that gives you a core capability to contribute. We think a lot about that capability. This was an idea around multifunctional teams and ideas of curiosity. But I completely agree with you. I think I may have a chance for one thought or observation.
Just in the global landscape, you're not one of the largest telecommunication companies. Could you give me one of the benefits of the size, and then maybe one of the challenges being in the UK that you think you face that's different than some of the potentially say, Asian markets or North American or Central American markets?
I think one of the the biggest benefit of working, for BT, I would say in this United Kingdom, is the intimate role that we play for government, so many customers up and down the land, customers who often run their own businesses, work within organisations. I think this national champion idea that BT has, it's decades and decades and decades of relationship and infrastructure in the UK is the biggest. It's such an honour to be able to run an infrastructure that connects so many people profoundly in the UK. And we have international operations, but that our background and our DNA has that, that opportunity within it. But then that takes us to the obligation, and what does that mean for us as we look forward? And for me, it makes us ever more determined to say that we have a role to be able to allow the UK to actually go from, there's lots of league tables about digital connectivity in all of the different countries. We are so committed to building out a network and a set of capabilities that allow customers to be able to deliver, be connected in their digital lives or their organisations, an infrastructure and a fabric that is going to settle us for decades to come. And that's why you see us at the heart of a digital fibre campaign. You see us thinking around back to the 10 million people who we want to give tech skills to. That is the thing that drives us. I think we do have a unique position in the UK. That is the big thing that I think we need to deliver for the future. And there's been a lot of comment around how BT operates in the press just over these last few days. But I think the great thing is it's all placing BT in that role, a pivotal role for a digital future for the UK. And I think Philip, our chief executive, talked about that opportunity for a modern BT to be at the heart of the next phase of a digital step forward, in this decade ahead. We are really determined to be there, and we are prepared to make the investments that we need to. Back to the regulatory and policy piece, there's some work we have to do to get the conditions right, but I'm confident we're going to be building out that piece ahead. Can I say thank you to everybody who has asked a question? I hope that has been of some insight. I leave you with my purple scat slide. If you are thinking about your future and that curiosity in the future, please do have a think about BT and have a think about that purple heart of our organisation. Thank you.